The hum of the starship was a low, constant rhythm beneath my feet, like the heartbeat of a living being I couldn't see. I had been orbiting Viridian. 7 for weeks now, a planet rumored to host the most enigmatic life forms in the outer sectors. Scientists called them Alithians, but the tales I had heard were more legend than fact. They were said to be sentient, intelligent, and terrifyingly beautiful, especially their queen, whose presence alone could warp minds. I never imagined I'd find myself so close to her. My name is Jalen Kale. I am an explorer, a researcher, and, if truth be told, someone who thrives on danger. I had been sent here as part of a covert interstellar mission, tasked with understanding a Lithian society without drawing attention. It was a delicate balance. Intruding too boldly could be fatal. The humans who had come for me either vanished without trace or returned broken, mumbling about whispers in the void. The mission had been going smoothly until the night I whispered a word. Part 1. The Encounter. The Alithian Palace was a fortress of bioluminescent crystal, perched atop cliffs that jutted into a storm of shifting gases. I had infiltrated the outer walls, using the shadow of a lunar eclipse to mask my presence. My orders were simple: observe, gather data, and leave. But simplicity rarely lasts when faced with the unknown. As I slipped through a corridor carved from living crystal, the air thrummed with energy I couldn't explain. It was a resonance that made my teeth vibrate and my thoughts tangle. Then I heard her, a voice, not spoken aloud, but felt as though it crawled along the inside of my skull. "You are here," the voice said. It was not accusatory, nor welcoming. It simply was. And somehow, it knew everything about me. The missions I had undertaken, the losses I had suffered, even the fear I tried to hide behind a mask of calm. I froze. I'm just here to observe," I whispered, unsure whether my words even mattered. And then it happened. Somehow, my whisper traveled further than my voice should have allowed. My breath carried a single word: "Forgive." Silence followed, but it was a silence charged with awareness. The Queen knew. Somehow, she had heard everything. Not just a word, but the meaning behind it. A light shimmered ahead, and before I could react, she appeared. The Alithian Queen. She was tall, impossibly elegant, with translucent skin that rippled with colors like living nebulae. Her eyes, large, iridescent, and impossibly deep, locked onto mine. I felt exposed, every secret laid bare. "You whisper," she said, her voice a melody of thought and sound, "and yet you reveal more than you intend." I swallowed, trying to form a coherent thought, but my words faltered. I didn't mean to intrude. I didn't. She raised a hand, delicate as a filament of starlight. Words carry weight, human, sometimes more than actions. And your word has resonance. I didn't understand. Not yet. Part 2. The Forbidden Connection. Over the following days, the Queen allowed me to remain within her palace. Observation had turned into something else, a fragile, intricate dance of mutual curiosity. She did not speak aloud in the human sense. Instead, her presence communicated in ripples of emotion, thought, and memory. I learned more in a single glance from her than I could have in a month of interviews or readings. And I began to notice that my whispers were no longer my own. Every time I spoke, she seemed to feel it as though it were her own thought. Small words, comfort, apology, doubt, carried significance I could never have imagined. One evening, as I traced my fingers along the smooth walls of her chambers, I whispered, almost myself, "I don't belong here." She felt it. I could sense her pulse, if you could call it that, synchronized with mine. There was no anger, no judgment, only understanding, tinged with something I could not name. The human crew had warned me never to let Elythians know your inner truths. They had called it dangerous, even deadly. But with her, I felt no danger, only a magnetic pull that drew me closer. My research notes became secondary. The Queen herself became the subject, the question, and the answer all at once. Then the whispers began to take on a new power, not just between us, but over the palace. If I murmured a plea or a thought of sorrow, the entire environment seemed to respond. Crystals would glow warmer, the air would shift, and sometimes, I swear, I could hear the stars themselves echoing my words. It terrified me and enthralled me simultaneously. Part 3. Secrets of the Queen. One night, she guided me to a chamber I had never seen. The walls pulsed with a rhythm that mirrored my heartbeat. At the center stood a basin of liquid that shimmered with countless colors. "This is the memory pool," she conveyed. "It holds everything I have seen and felt. And now, it holds a part of you as well." Before I could protest, the Queen reached toward the liquid, and a wave of light swept over me. I saw visions of my past, my childhood, my family, my mistakes, and then, impossibly, visions of hers. I saw her rise to power, her victories and betrayals, the loneliness of immortality. Every secret she had ever harbored was laid bare, and yet it was not invasive. She trusted me, despite having seen all of me already. I whispered forgive, and you heard. I said, trembling, "Why did you listen?" She did not answer with words. She simply extended her hand, and in that gesture I understood. Forgiveness was a bridge, a resonance, and now an unspoken bond between us. It was then that I realized the truth. Elythians did not merely hear words. They felt their essence. My whisper had been more than a sound. It had been an offering of vulnerability, and she had accepted it. Part 4. The Shadow of War. Our fragile bond was soon tested. Reports came of a human fleet entering Elythian space, prepared to claim the planet as a strategic resource. Diplomacy had failed. Violence loomed. The Queen moved with a speed and precision that left me breathless. Her court became a hive of planning, strategy, and subtle communication. Every motion, every thought interconnected. "I cannot interfere directly," I said, haunted by the inevitability of conflict. "You interfere simply by being," she conveyed. "Your presence, your words, they alter perception. They have already changed outcomes." In the days that followed, I whispered constantly, each word strategic suggestion, a caution, or a plea for peace. And she heard. The Queen acted on the resonance of my whispers, outmaneuvering human warships without a single shot fired. She manipulated our enemies not through violence, but through awareness, revealing weaknesses they never knew they had. It was then I realized the true depth of our connection. My voice, my intent, had become a weapon, and she wielded it with precision. But with this power came terror. I had never imagined that something as simple as a whispered word could sway the fate of a civilization. Part 5. The Forbidden Moment. After the battle, I was summoned to the throne room. The palace shimmered as though the stars themselves were reflecting the aftermath. The queen stood before me, not as a ruler, but as someone human in her longing, if only slightly. "You risked yourself," she said, the words resonating in my mind, "all because you spoke a single truth." And I heard it. I stepped closer, unable to resist the pull that had haunted me since the first whisper. "I didn't just speak words," I said. "I spoke my heart." Her gaze softened, the iridescent glow of her eyes dimming to a warmer shade. And then, impossibly, she leaned forward, allowing our minds to brush, a forbidden intimacy no human had ever shared with a Lithian. I could feel her thoughts, her emotions, her history, and she could feel mine. It was terrifying, overwhelming, yet exhilarating beyond anything I had ever known. I whispered her name, not aloud, but in the depth of consciousness, and she responded, not with words, but with the echo of recognition, of trust, of something profoundly sacred. For a moment, time itself seemed to bend around us. The palace, the stars, the universe beyond, all faded, leaving only the connection between two beings who had defied the boundaries of language, species, and expectation. Part 6. The Departure. The human fleet eventually retreated, unaware of how narrowly disaster had been averted. I was faced with a choice: return to the stars as an observer, a diplomat, or remain with the Queen in a bond no other could comprehend. I chose neither. Instead, I chose to carry the memory, the resonance, the whisper that had changed everything. The Queen understood. She allowed me to leave, but not without a promise. Our words, our connection, would endure across light years, across lifetimes. As I lifted off from Viridian 7, the whisper returned to me, not as a sound, but as a presence, a reminder that even in the void of space, even among the infinite stars, a single word, uttered with intent, could ripple through existence itself. And I knew, deep in my soul, that the Queen had heard everything, and she would never forget.